good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Indeed, it's a beautiful Wednesday morning. How's it started for you? Well, we hope that we can make it start right. Welcome to the program. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And not just start right, but start better and end beautiful. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, today is June 21. It didn't start, well, it started with huge, heavy traffic for me, Maokwe. And a good number of people going to the island from Bukola's side this morning. And for those who are going out of Lagos, I don't even know how far the traffic has trailed. Anyway, good morning. Let me not spoil your morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. It's a Wednesday morning. And one of the things that we find, is that the use of the internet is very rife now. The use of the social media is huge. I just saw a report that says out of the volume of people using the internet in Nigeria, about 31% of them use social media. And guess where we are said to have a lot of hate speech? Yes, social media. Cyberbullying and all kinds of things. And so it was June 18 that the UN prescribed that they will have what they call the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. Just yesterday, the UNHCR put out a statement themselves saying that, look, we need partnership with the media because, well, first of all, the UN General Assembly's president said, hate speech, countering it, is a shared responsibility of every one of us. I think that fact needs to be clear. It is all our responsibility to ensure that we stall and end hate speech. The question is how. Nigeria's UNHCR, beg your pardon, NHCR is saying, has issued an advisory on the role of the media. Of course, they began by saying that, look, the media is doing an amazing job at that as well. And hate speech is intricately related to human rights, either in its form or in its outcome. And everyone believes that, of course, the established media is doing its own bit about that. The social media, perhaps not so much. But then there's also a warning coming from the United Nations office in Nigeria saying, according to them, social media and others have been the ones spreading hate speech. And said this, what I would call a quotable quote, and that's coming from the UN coordinator in Nigeria, excuse me, Matthias Schmale. He said, if we don't tackle hate speech, the effort would consume us. All the states have the obligation to make sure hate speech is tackled. The question then is how?
Well, it's a collective responsibility, Ayo. We must all be sensitive to what, not just sensitive now, be aware of what hate speech is, of what misinformation is, of what disinformation is. We must be conscious about, the rights of the next person to us, where our own rights start, ends is where the other person stops. So we must be sensitive to their needs, to their desire to be validated, especially in a heterogeneous country like Nigeria. So we must not carry on as though, we're the only ones living. And as far as, misinformation and disinformation is concerned, we must also know the definition of terms. What is misinformation? False or inaccurate information. What is disinformation? Disinformation is also wrong information, but with the intention to mislead. So, some part of the traditional media, they're doing tremendous, wonderful work where fact-checking is concerned. They are going the extra mile, to research stories, not counter them as soon as they've been put out, but go back, reflect on them, and research and provide a background check to those stories. But it's a collective responsibility. We must not all fall for the clickbaits of, sensationalism merchants. That's what I call them. And they abound on social media. We must, and Malcolm does an awesome job of that, of, making us aware of the need to confirm that story before we share them on WhatsApp, before we share them on our social media platforms. So it really is a collective responsibility, and we must continue to remind ourselves of the importance of putting out accurate information out there. Malkwe and Chamberlain.
Well, I think, Bukola, thank you, by the way. These days, people rarely say things that are kind, but you have consistently remained very kind to me. Thank you. Can I just say that I think it's very important to celebrate the bright aspects of this. Yes, there is so much to worry about in terms of hate speech. And when we think about the effects that it's had on our world, just in case you're wondering, how this affects me, or, what exactly is the worst that can happen with hate speech, the world is replete with examples of how peoples have suffered. Peoples, yes, and I'm using that very deliberately. Let's not forget the Hutu-Tutsi rivalry that, degenerated and became a genocide in Rwanda. It's only in 1994 that this happened. Srebrenica massacre. If you want to go back in history, there was pogrom against the Jews. Even we've had some we've had our own fair share. I mean, we fought a fratricidal war here in Nigeria, and we haven't learned much from the lessons that we had from our own civil war. So we have, a lot of negatives in our history to remember, to teach us, positives, to focus on the positives. But I want to focus more on the positives and those who continue to remind us that, we need to, with plenty of freedom comes enormous responsibility. If we are advocating for free speech, we need to know that we need to use it wisely. We need to use it to build our country. We need to use it to build people up. We need to use it to be kind towards others. Do not hide behind anonymity and say things that would tear people down. Yes, criticize, by all means, do so, but do not tear your country down, because you must have a country first before you can have that freedom of speech, before you can advocate any rights that you seek. So it's a wonderful thing that the United Nations has now set a day aside to raise awareness of this and also seek the cooperation of everyone, in this fight against pulling down hate speech. I must also say, though, something also happened, I think, recently. They were saying that government is the biggest spreader, biggest sponsor of hate news, of hate speech. And I think that, when we talk about citizens' rights and freedoms, I don't think that this is something that citizens alone need to do for themselves. I also think that governments need to examine, and where it is that citizens see that the path that government is towing, especially when it is not doing what it needs to do, citizens have a duty to call out their governments and say, this thing that you're doing could actually lead to the detriment of us all. Don't forget that some of the biggest programs in history have been sponsored oftentimes by government officials, and they have been fought through the barrels of the gun of people who had government power. So, yes, there is some truth to that, and I think that when that is about to happen, it behoves reasonable people to continue to call their government to account and, hold government officials accountable.
And I mean, it's very interesting to see that right there at that gathering, how even the human rights team, all the UN Day, just highlighting this particular event. And, yes, it is a day that they set aside to educate the public on issues of concern, mobilize political will and resources to address this global problem, and even to celebrate and the achievements, reinforcing the achievements of humanity as well. But, there are several ways to go about all of this. But one of the ways is, look, the authorities over here, how hard it is for the government officials to make themselves available or to release information, even though they tell you about the FOI. But Joe and I know the challenges of that, of accessing information. Even with the FOI, SERAP can tell us a lot more about how much they try to get access to information, and it never really comes through. But then, and the thing about this social media dimension to it is if you just go ahead and check out quite a number of those who vehemently spew some of these narratives online. You just look at the profiles, They either go with pseudonyms, you don't see any identity on them. So, but we know in several other crimes how measures are being put in place to ensure those mechanisms are there, that they're held accountable for certain narratives, because you may think that it's just a tweet, it's just a short message, it's just, just to poke fun on people, but it has huge implications, because you never know how those reactions could spread. Yes, sometimes it even causes a lot more harm than you could ever imagine. So yes, we're hoping that with the UN Day to spread awareness and to ensure that these kind of issues are addressed, we hope it doesn't, I think that debate came through about either self-regulation, self-censorship, government regulation, government censorship. That's a thin line separating both. So they have got to find a way to ensure that this achieves the desired result without the authorities unnecessarily just going overboard and then doing. Every country will tell you, well, we have to monitor and see what our citizens are doing on social media in the name of national security. But I guess that will be another story for another time. But it's important that this kind of issues are drummed up there, because people go through depression. And when you send messages there, you don't know how much you contribute to several people also worsening their cases. So just a thought or two before you put out some messages, because just think. You never know. People going through different things. So your message could make or mar. So choose, decide, what side of history would you be if you keep going on that way. All right, let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies here today. Vanguard newspaper, that's the first one here. And they are focusing on the fuel situation, anxiety as ex-depot petrol price rises to 490 naira per litre. Yeah.
What's that? Anxiety as ex-depot petrol prices rise. But that's no surprise.
490 naira.
No surprise, Chimling, with the floating of the naira or the depreciation of whichever side you belong to, whether you see it as a policy or not. This is expected.
Well, it's a surprise to a lot of people, because they thought that, okay, maybe with this, hopefully, the impression they always give is things will peter out, it will make it a lot more affordable for lots of people, but now they're anxious. And you know what anxiety can do? I know you drive through several fuel stations. You've already seen the... Do we still have traffic in petrol stations these days? Is there anywhere? We still do?
A little, yes. Was it on Saturday? I tried to buy petrol. I was spending at least 15 minutes waiting my turn, and I was wondering what's going on. I thought we had deregulated.
Okay. I mean, the areas are passed. I didn't see, so I was thinking maybe I need to drive around a little more. But on the second thought, I thought,
but let me say this:
driving around like that.
It is the NNPC station that I go to. So
yeah, there you go.
I think people
understandable.
Yes, people have a bit of trust for the pumps, and I think that should go to the NMDPRA, the people who regulate filling stations. They need to make sure that a litre is truly a litre. They need to ensure that it's quality petrol that people are buying, and let us know that the only thing that is different might be the 1 naira or 2 naira that is, different. But when people don't trust pumps or petrol stations, and petrol is now 540 naira or thereabouts, then there is a lot to go and wait in an NNPC petrol station for.
Yeah, and look at the riders. Retail price rises to 515 naira. Major marketers lift at 446.57 naira per litre. Regulator unavailable at filling stations.
See what we're saying?
PMS now for the rich, ascribed to the NLC. The regulation drives change in price, ascribed to Ipman. We are still far from deregulation, Professor Iledari. So if we're still far, when are we going to get there? Until we're... But then they equally have some representation here about what's going on at the tribunal. Presidential poll, Tinubu opens defense June 30. Atiku, Obi close cases Friday. So all of that associated right here on the front page of Vanguard today.
Okay, well, take a look at that, another dimension of how subsidy removal could affect celebrations. Daily Trust has this. Subsidy removal, Naira devaluation, hike ram price. What? That will not eat ram this Salah? It's a lie. You find details on page 4, but these are realities. And Chairman, don't forget, I think we're just about to see the true test. The true test of subsidy removal wasn't the initial removal. The true test of subsidy removal is whether governments can actually withstand the heat, the pressure, when the price goes beyond what we're currently seeing. When it comes down, of course, people will be happy and government will need to worry about that. But government will be praying that the price of crude remains steady and also that the Naira that they have floated does not go, haywire. If it doesn't go haywire, then we might have relatively stable prices for a while. And if the price of crude doesn't overshoot on the international crude market, but if it does, if that happens, and you now begin to really see whether or not they can stand the heat in the kitchen when petrol prices are now really, really, really beyond what everyone can afford. But Daily Trust is showing you other aspects of it. Subsidy removal, Naira devaluation, hike ram price. Cost up to 700,000 Naira in Abuja. Is it a cow? 700,000 Naira for a ram. 400,000 Naira in Kwara. Okay, so you might want to say maybe we'll travel to Kwara, buy the ram. What will it cost to transport it down here? Really, I mean, the mathematics might work these days. Buyers groan, traders lament low patronage. The details are on page 4 of the paper. You have a number of other stories there. Kano governor picks Ganduje's ex-chief of staff, NNPP chair, 17 others as commissioners. Okay, that's there. EFCC releases autumn after 9 hours questioning. Who does this counting sometimes? The journalists that pose there. And
oh, yeah.
It's hour 1, second hour, third hour. Oh, 9 hours. He was there for 9 solid. Anyways, details on page 31. And 6 lakh, Transparency International, others seek Tinubu's commitment to anti-corruption war. They have a number of other stories. Presidential Tribunal grants PDP 2 more days to conclude petition. So we'll leave it there for Daily Trust newspapers.
And turn our attention to Nigerian Tribune. You know, Mark, that story also got my attention. You might just have to get a pond, in your backyard these days and, try catfish as an alternative.
Wait, does that mean no ram suya?
Ram, goat meat and cow, are beyond your reach.
That's yours, but does that mean no ram suya? Chamberlain, no more ram suya?
No more. No, yeah. I'm sure Chamberlain will host you when next you go to Abuja. It shouldn't be a problem, ram suya. But let's take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. The papers choose to tell different parts this morning, and the Nigerian Tribune leads with a follow-up on election petition court. Atiku, G5 governors absent as PDP molds reconciliation. Well, this is, the PDP reflecting now, not the election petition court, but of course, there was news from that yesterday. So let's go further down at the bottom strip. After 10-hour grilling, EFCC grants autumn bail. And as we go above the nameplate, subsidy 2 years after NNPCL's auto-gas program drags. The price of petrol is going up due to the harmonization of the FX rate. So what's going to happen to the transition to auto-gas? The Tribune is having us know that it's dragging. But just 2 weeks ago, independent marketers promised that CNG will be available rather than later. But who's leading the charge on the awareness about how to transit from petrol to CNG-powered cars?
Well, that's for cars. But I can tell you that for generators, the conversions have started.
They've started already. They have started already.
Even Lagos State government had to come out and say, guys, don't just go to anybody. Be very careful who you go to for that conversion. So you don't have to power your generator with petrol. You can power it with gas. Even gas is not joke.
And you know, there are safety and risks, concerns associated with this transition. So we must get educated. We're going to be asking a lot of those questions for you later on the program. And lastly, Atiku PDP lament difficulties in getting documents from INEC. That's coming from the Presidential Election Petition Court. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
The Guardian newspaper has a very concerning one that concerns anyone who uses any form of frequency, but particularly us. Look at it right there on the front page. Digital switchover falters. 29 states remain on analog. 29 out of 36. I'm not good with math, but 29 states out of 36. Well, Abuja is not a state, but it seems Abuja has crossed over, has done the switch over in a number of other states, as you can see on that front page of the Guardian newspaper. The story will interest you, especially if you know what that means. Conversations have been on this for years. What's the reason for the stalling? Find the details on page 6. Right under the nameplate, dollar trades at discount against Naira in black market. And look at this one. Like Nigeria, foreign allies warn Ethiopia over $95 million stock fund consequences. The details you'll find on page 15 of the paper this morning. Several other stories that will take your fancy right there on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. That's the Guardian.
Okay, take a look at New Telegraph. Airfares to double on international routes as IATA issues new tickets to airlines at 770 Naira to the dollar. Now, new monetary policies to solve airlines' $800 million trapped funds. So every sector is feeling this pinch now, rising by the day, almost everywhere you turn. Even in little sports centers, the fees too have gone up almost everywhere now. So now, airfares double. I mean, local airfares, they usually just they were just soaring with reckless abandon, you know, because these mechanisms were never even there in the first place. So who checks, who regulates? It looks as if it was just free for all. And who knows? Anyway, yesterday you read the stories about electricity tariff also set to rise by July. Now you've seen airfares double. And then anxiety as depot petrol prices rises.
We're not trying to depress you this morning, Chimberlain. We did say we're trying to make the
No, they can't be depressed because the sun rises and sets. So you just got to stay calm as much as you can. You have to live your life. So life goes on. So don't worry about that. Don't worry. Just worry about the things you can control. Or else you will just give yourselves a lot more problems than answers. So just know how you plan. Identify your needs and your wants. So once you make that distinction, then you might be able to take one step further in the right direction. So proper planning too will help you a lot. So just look at our plan before you set out. It will help you because you know that commodity is pretty pricey these days. You just want to burn diesel or fuel just because you didn't calculate properly. And maybe that might have the way we drive, the way we use the roads. Never know. I hope it doesn't fuel road rage, you know.
I hope not too.
Yeah, but look at what's at the bottom strip. Stewardship. EFCC invites grills ex-Benue Governor Autumn for 9 hours. They equally have that here.
So 9 hours is consistent.
How he was interrogated over issues bordering on alleged gross corruption ascribed to a source. So, yeah. That's what you see right here. Nigeria to earn 138 billion naira in July as gas market shifts to Asia. Oil price crashes to $70 per barrel.
Crashes.
What did they tell us about?
So that might
crashes?
be good and that might be bad. Good because, you know, hopefully it might affect the price since we're still importing. But bad because our revenues overall might be affected.
even though we earn 138 billion naira. So, who knows? But just be cautious and see how you respond to all of these things. So even government agencies now, people will need to ask a lot more questions about agencies, what they're supposed to do, how they function, how they spend public money.
Indeed.
Accountability is going to be high on demand now. So with all of this, you bet that more questions will be there. So that is New Telegraph this morning.
Well, I still have leadership for you, and they are talking about the effects of the rejigging amongst the service chiefs. New service chiefs, they say, military tradition sends 40 generals packing. That's page 4 of the paper. The new chief of army staff, I think, was taken from 2 courses below where the immediate past chief of army staff was. And, you know, there's always this tradition, according to them, it's either the generals at his level say, okay, we can still work with you, or, you know, they retire if they would not agree to salute their junior, as the case might be. So page 4 is where you'll find details of all of that. It will inject new blood into nation's security architecture. That's according to experts. And this one made me chuckle yesterday. I hope that he's able to really be a tiger. I will chase criminals like a tiger. That's according to the acting IGP. Yes, don't forget that all of most of the security chiefs are still in acting capacity until they're confirmed by the National Assembly.
Well,
so
whichever way, you can call him acting tiger, no problem. But he's going to chase.
An acting tiger can still bite. So, oh well. He said, I will chase criminals like a tiger. I will devour the enemies, the internal enemies of Nigeria like a lion.
Animals in the house.
Please, we hope that that's where it stops. We've had too many animals stealing money. Let us hope that, you know, if there are animals who are going to do bad things, well, guess what? The acting IGP is also going to, is feeling like an animal.
I hope
who's going to chase them.
The policemen on the road won't take this literally and begin to respond to us as if they are the tigers and we are the ones that are chasing. Please.
Oh, Lord, no.
The president gave a speech on inauguration day. Look at what happened to petrol. You just have to be cautious these days. Just speak up because you never know. People got challenges.
Please, it's the IGP who said so, not these men.
Right. Wasn't the president Tinubu that
But
talked
you also
about
have to be sure that you're not behaving like an animal, because if you behave like an animal, you will see the tiger in them and the lion in them.
Well, these kind of things you never can tell. I mean, you know how people internalize words. The president said, "I only read the speech, and look at what's going on out there." So you don't know. So better safe than sorry, they say.
Anyway, I think that he will only go after those who behave like animals, and bad animals at that. If you behave like a bad animal, you will see the tiger and the lions in our police officers. But let's leave it for that story. $60 billion Afrexim asset base, more funding for Nigeria, others. You find details on page 7 of the paper. You also see a number of other stories just at the bottom. 10th NAS. Battle shifts to reps, principal officers. So, you know that stuff we always hear about juicy committees and no juicy committees. Oh. Yeah, the lobbying is going to start now. And when you see that someone like the Speaker of the House of Reps has an overwhelming support, you have to ask, who is he going to put where and who won't he put where?
Almost an overwhelming convoy, too.
Yeah, but yeah, that's something that, you know, we really need to take up in terms of the commitment of government officials, especially at the executive level, to see what changes, what costs in governance are they cutting. If they're asking the people to sacrifice a bit more, if the people are going through different levels of hardship, simply because we cannot control corruption in certain sectors, what levels of sacrifice are leaders, you know, willing to make to also show that they identify with the current hardships that the average Nigerian is going through?
Yeah, because that's the president's convoy.
Yeah.
Goodness.
All the convoys that, you know, we'll see, even though sometimes they say that, oh, it might be his colleagues who have joined him in his convoy going to wherever it is that he's going to. They're all driving their personal cars.
We'll see if they join them all the time.
I mean, we need to know how many cars officially are, say, the president, his vice, governors, their deputies, Senate president, speaker. Do they still have the outriders? You know, these are questions we need to, well, maybe that's on the side of petrol. What about the major costs of governance? Is there going to be, people, of course, do not want people to lose their jobs, but there needs to be a way that we run government a little more efficiently. They're big questions, really. And I think, as you said, you know, people are going to be demanding accountability. If there's traffic somewhere and it's avoidable, they're going to be coming for the FRSA, for instance.
If you can afford to fix the roads at night, so we don't waste man-hours on the roads. And burn fuel and diesel needlessly, there will be questions. So these are the issues, right?
I can draw their attention to one place. I mean, there's a spot along the airport road that needs not to be blocked. Every day, you know, on that road, especially closing hours, that spot. And the only reason why it is blocked is because cars are dropping people along the airport road, on the main express. And every day it is like that. And you have to ask, is there anyone who's concerned about law and order in the federal capital territory? Maybe
we'll wait and see, since there's a new sheriff in town. But there should be a new sheriff in town, and they should act as such, hopefully. Well, but guys in Lagos about the expressway,
yeah.
I don't know, the sheriff is
there. At least we can feel your pain from here.
Oh, the sheriff's are in the studio there.
Well,
honestly, you cannot feel the pain.
That's another kettle of fish entirely.
You cannot feel the pain. You cannot feel the pain. But it's okay to try it via Bluetooth. Okay, well, you have one paper?
Well, yeah. We were going to talk about Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, talk about efficiency. There is no efficiency on that road, but sometimes we get respite, and sometimes it's a stage of confusion with you know, cars driving against traffic. This time around is on both sides of the expressway, and there is no monitoring at all. Accidents waiting to happen, and very little presence of, you know, officials, traffic officials, federal road safety officials, and, you know, the police that are supposed to be in charge of maintaining law and order, you know, making quick business on the expressway. I thought we should talk about it, Ayo, you know, for the sake of travelers on that route, a lot of whom, you know, are traveling from one end of the country to another end of the country. Most Nigerians are using that expressway. Things must be done better on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Let's take a look at this Nigeria before we look at other papers this morning. How we aborted Emefiele's plot to flee Nigeria by DSS. Agency says it has credible evidence to prove allegations. Court fixes July 13 for suspended CBN boss suit. And of course, the other day, the lawyers were requesting access to him, and not just the lawyers, but the family members as well. We hope that the DSS has responded to that request. EFCC quizzes releases ex-Benue governor or Tom after hours of grilling, 10 hours we were told. And the newly decorated IGP is there. He's been, you know, talked about a whole lot already, but his work is cut out for him. The Amnesty International is already doing a count of just how many Nigerians have been killed under this administration. 120 as at the time that the Amnesty International collated their own count. So how many more? So the service chiefs, the newly decorated IGP, your work is cut out. Release the tiger on the insurgents and the bandits. Above the nameplate, you find this one. Tinubu appoints Hakeem Odumusu as EFCC chairman. It's a page 5 read, and I believe that is subject to confirmation. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
And take a quick look at the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Is also talking about the former CBN boss. Emefiele's fate hangs as court extends ruling till July. The story is on page 3. There's subsisting order for his detention. FG lawyers tell court Stakeholders link political undertone to his suspension and detention, and that is a fear that I'm hoping that we'll never have to get to. But hey, that's our reality right there. About the nameplate, public service cleanup. Tinubu appoints ex-AIG Odumosu as acting EFCC chairman. How is that related to public service cleanup? Find the details on page 3 of the paper this morning. And right under the picture on the front page, CIBN, KPMG highlight benefits of petrol subsidy removal. The details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper. And manufacturers query introduction of 7.5% VAT on diesel. No.
That's not true.
No. But
That's
hey,
not true.
I am not good. The details are
What's
on the inside.
What's the point of payment?
The details
the point
are
of
on the
purchase?
inside page, pages.
Diesel is already 800 naira per litre.
Bukola, you wanted more details, right?
Yeah, more details.
On the inside pages. And with the Nigerian News Direct this morning, we come to the end of taking a look at some of the papers, but just the beginning of the issues lined up for you today. Just stay with us.
As we promised the last time, when we adjourned, when Labour called off the strike and tabled their demands, we went through all those demands, and ourselves, that is government and Labour, went through all the items on their list, and we all said we were going to go back to our principals and make consultations. They also said they were going to go to the executives and members and make consultations so that we should reconvene today and move forward. And that's exactly what we did. We reconvened today, and then both parties went through this list and we ticked off the viable ones. Those things are broken into 3 different categories. The immediate, those that can be of low-hanging fruit in the immediate C, then in the short run, the medium term, and the long term. So those list of demands in terms of implementation and execution fall into those 3 broad categories of short, medium, and long-term, categories.
The communique that was signed the last time we had a meeting. So if you look at that communique, there are some action items in that communique. So it's actually how will these action items be delivered. So, for example, we need to have a presidential steering committee that will oversee everything. Then we also need to have technical subcommittees because, for example, when you talk about the issue of CNG, so the issue of CNG, you need experts. The issue of CNG, you need those people that are willing to invest. In the issue of CNG, you need the National Oil Company, NNPC Limited, to come up with what they need to do and the time with which they are going to deliver. So all that, there are some technicalities that are required beyond this meeting. So those technicalities will now move into the technical committee. So those technical committee will subsume into the presidential committee. But all these, we must conclude everything maximum in 8 weeks. So those technical committee, some will submit their report in 1 week. Once they submit in 1 week, we implement. Some will submit in 2 weeks, we implement. But the last should not exceed 8 weeks. We could not agree broadly, totally on the final terms of reference, but we will work on that between today, tomorrow, and have the full terms of reference across all boards. Because we are looking at having a broad 5 technical committees that we subsume into the presidential steering committee. Yeah.
Welcome back. So yes, Labour and government working on fine-tuning those terms of reference before they make them available. But 8 weeks, what they said, the timeline within which they can or should get some agreements, so to speak. Well, we've got Mr. Jacob Pellet joining us here today. He is a founder and CEO of TAF Africa. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, my best friend Chamberlain, and my very best friend Mokwe.
Thank you as well.
And Ayo.
Yeah, and Buki as well. But we will go through, because we have seen some of your position paper impressions of what you require or what you like to focus on, some of the key issues. But TUC also did have a list of demands to governments before, even while that meeting went on, which we imagine are part of the items that they will be taking a look at when that negotiation goes back and forth. I don't know if you've seen some of those, but we can also see some of those highlighted right there on the screen. They want. I think the first one is a big challenger, but minimum wage is a key component of the demands. They want it increased from the current 30,000 naira to 200,000 naira before the end of June 2023, with consequential adjustments on cost of living allowances like feeding, transport, housing, so, and then they have several other lists on that demand. They want tax holiday for employees, both in government and private sector. Those who earn less than 200,000 naira or 500 USD monthly, whichever is higher. And so living out, well, I think that suggests several other people can take care of themselves, including yourself. Immediate review of the National Health Insurance Scheme to cover more Nigerians and prevent out of stock of drugs. The list goes on.
Yeah, well, it's also important to note here that I think as much as they are doing a good job, they left the most vulnerable. I didn't see anything that touches on the most vulnerable in our society, and that's the problem. Every time.
Have you read the entire list of demands?
Well, the few that I took a cursory look at them. I didn't see specific intervention. And that's why we came up with the position paper, which we have shared with them. I have been in touch with the Labour president and another friend of mine, Mr. Benson, Barrister Benson. Hopefully they will incorporate some of these demands into what they are presenting before the various subcommittee, which unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, I don't see a representations of persons with disability. If there is, I'm not aware of it. But then, if there is not, this is an opportunity for them to incorporate persons with disability, so that we can tell them exactly where it pinches us. But then their demands are genuine. Their demands are achievable. The problem is sometimes is not placing a demand, is the workability and the implementation of that demand. And hopefully they will take into consideration various factors, including the economic factors and the ability of the people that will implement some of these measures.
Well, when you make some, will you even tell us where are we in the scheme of things when we talk about providing that infrastructure in the first place to cater for those who are physically challenged? And because sometimes one wonders, the messages, the advocacy that you've been putting over the years, are they listening, or is it falling on deaf ears?
I think they are. When you have lived with a myth for a very long time, it takes consistent banging of truth to demystify that myth. I think we're making headways. I think they are listening. The problem is always in doing. It's one thing for you to listen to an ideology, a policy, or an advocacy that someone is putting across. It's another thing for you to do them. It's in doing that we have problem. You know, implementation of some of these ideas, some of the things that we have been putting across for that should be done for persons with disabilities. So we're struggling with implementation, and we will not give up.
So from your perspective now, do we have the fundamentals, the foundation upon which some of these demands which you are asking that we take cognizance of those with disability? Do we have that?
Chamberlain, that's the thing. The people who try to make intervention for us are ignorant of what we need.
Oh.
That's a major problem. That's where the rubber meets the road. They don't know. I was shocked. I met, and I'm not going to mention name, I met a very highly placed politician, someone that you would say has been a very strong policymaker, coming to me and saying, hey, Jake, I don't know why you think albinism is a disability. I don't believe albinism is a disability. And I said to him, sir, you know how long we've been friends? I didn't recognize you when you passed me. He said, what? What do you mean? I said, I didn't, until you spoke. I said, I struggle with my sight. I can see, Chamberlain, I'm here. You're just a few meters away from me. I can't see the total makeup of your face. You're a friend. There are many times you had passed. You had to say hello. I was just commending my friend Mogwe. Many times you passed me. I didn't recognize you, you know. So when people don't know the people that they're trying to intervene for, how can you intervene for them? You know, you don't know what my needs are. You know, you don't know the fact that right now, persons with disability with this subsidy are going to struggle with transportation. Mobility has always been their problem. They're going to struggle with access to health care. You know, they're going to struggle with putting basic food on their table. You know, so what then can be done if you don't know that a person with a disability, a person with albinism struggle with his eyes, is not able to see? I'm here, I'm literally not seeing anything on that screen. How can you intervene for me? You know, so the problem is that when people are in tie and suits in a cozy office trying to make laws, policies, intervention for people that are in the village, that you have never met them, you don't know what their needs are, you know, how can you cater for us? So that's, even when government have genuine intention, good intention, the action can match the intention because they just simply don't know the people that they should be working for. And so there's a need for a whole lot of awareness, deliberate strategic awareness. You know, how many people actually know what fuel subsidy is? You know, these are things...
Apart from the fact that they used to buy petrol a lot cheaper than now.
Exactly. But how many of us have cars to buy petrol?
Well, sometimes they own little generators and they can tell the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Or they have somebody who have that and all that. But, you know, I think government needs to recognize the need for an inclusive intervention by getting the people that they're trying to intervene for, sit right there and help them make strategic and concrete intervention. That's where the problem is.
And, you know, a lot of people cannot fault that particular argument, but, you know, some people say regardless of government's best intentions, it will always be the greater good to the greater number. There will still be people who will be left out. I guess that's one of the reasons you are making this advocacy, that it shouldn't be people with disabilities.
That's right. That's right.
But when I look at the general challenge which you have listed, you've talked about increased transportation costs, reduced mobility and independence. Some people are going to say this is something that everybody are going to face. They're going to have to make a decision on whether or not that trip is important. You're going to have to make a decision on whether, you know, you really want to, you can spare the cash that you want to use for transportation. How does this really impact the community of those with disability in such a way that you can argue that it is much more than anybody else who doesn't have a disability?
Well, first is the level of poverty. Very many of us, and I'm careful not to use numbers because there is no data, but then again, very many of our community members are really poor. But just to bring it home to very important question that you ask, we all go to the market. Simple things like going to the market. Mm-hmm. Simple things like trying to get to the hospital. You know, simple things like visiting family members, not just for social interaction, but for you to get one form of help or the other. Going to school, you know. It can be really difficult if you want to look at the challenges within the community of persons with disability. Mobility is #1 need. You know, if you don't move to certain places, you can't get certain things. If you don't move to, I kept saying hospital, things like hospitals, because there are many of us that are on regular medication and they have to go get those medication. You can think of the fact how hard it's going to be for them. Transportation cost is to the roof right now, you know. And of course, when that happens, it has a ripple effect. It's going to affect how food items moves. It's going to astronomically increase the cost in the market. And you don't blame the market woman. She had to pay extra transportation cost to bring in fruit. So, and don't forget also that there are many of us in the community that have one small businesses or the other, or even they are an employee, okay? And I have over 21 staff, you know, and the feedback I kept getting is it's becoming relatively difficult for us to come to work.
That's everybody. I mean, if you go down the wrong, I mean, from people who, especially those who are at the real bottom, you know, those who are drivers, security people.
I agree with you. You see, that's the problem. We must not equate certain demography of people as everybody. We're not everybody. My challenges are different and can be far more worse than your own challenges.
So that's what I'm asking. You know, what precisely, why do you think that this hits them harder, I mean, than people who would normally be classed as vulnerable?
The poverty index, the poverty level, the mobility issues, the stigmatization and discrimination, you know. Do you know that up till this moment, there's still certain people that wouldn't want to shake my hands? I can't touch a person with albinism. I see the surprise.
Why do they do that?
Well, some of them are still living in the myth and superstition that albinism may be contagious. You know, I mean, I never forget an experience that I had growing up when I went to my uncle's house and the wife was pregnant and they wouldn't let me in. And I'm not ashamed to say this on national television. They wouldn't let me in. And I wanted to know, as a young man, I went asking questions. And someone said, well, I don't want to give birth to a baby with albinism, you know. And look at it. So discrimination plays a very...
That must have hurt.
Yeah, it still hurts till this day.
Yeah, that must have hurt. And really, there's a lot of work that can be done in terms of, you know, removing stigma, removing to show that people with albinism and even living with any kind of disability, you know, they didn't bring it upon themselves. This is something that they were born with, and so there are two sides to the coin. You know, when people say maybe people with albinism cannot or should not be classified as people with disability, because then people. It doesn't mean that they don't have challenges.
Yeah.
Would you say that they fall into the category of, you know, people who just have challenges? For instance, women and young people. Do you think, for instance, that they could be categorized as that, or do you think that it's a little different?
You know, Mark, I'm going to, on a national, I'm going to ask you to please help mentor some of young ladies with albinism, they're the worst hit. You know, they go through all kinds of abuse. You know, and even a situation where some men will say, look, I want to test and see what you look like, you know. And many of them have been impregnated and have babies, and husband walks away from them. These are not, I'm not trying to hype or create any, these are reality, stark reality, you know, that is happening every day, you know. And so it's important to understand that even the CRPD, which is the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, recognizes albinism with a lot of issues around reasonable accommodation, the issue of discrimination, but our major visible aspect of disability is our sight. Do you know how I went to school? Do you know that once I dropped out of school, I'm self-educated? You know, I have to go to the blackboard to look at the blackboard, you know, and come back to copy what I saw. And between the blackboard and myself, I have missed a lot more component of that statement. That's the struggle. And you're also dealing with a teacher who will never respect you, who disrespects you before the class. You know, and that's why my focus has been education. Get education, whether you're a person with disability and, of course, albinism. Get education. The more you're educated, the less you will be discriminated.
Well, quite a lot right there to take in, and quite a lot that people with disabilities go through. So the very essence, the very need, how very important it is for some of these awareness to keep, you know, do what we can to ensure. It's a societal challenge, really. Society needs to actually live up and ensure that we just stop.
Chamberlain, the society needs to fix the mess. It takes individuals like yourself, like John, like several others who have been making serious intervention and giving us the platform. And you know, the thing is that many of us live in denial. I'm not going to live in denial. I'm not going to live in denial of the fact that, you know, there are struggles that the society has created, all right? But I'm not also going to fold my hands and watch me go through the struggle and break down. No. By the way, I want to say it publicly. I love my albinism. I'm not asking for anything less.
All right.
Yes, there are challenges, but I will cope with the challenges and I would turn the tide.
Let's bring in our colleagues in Lagos.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. You know, Mr. Pele, it's disheartening to hear about, you know, some of your personal struggles as a result of your albinism, and it just causes one to reflect on the Nigerian disability law, which criminalizes all forms of discrimination against persons with disability. And it says that if an individual is found violating this law, he or she is liable to a fine of 100,000 naira or a term of 6 months imprisonment. The question is, you know, are these laws effective? Who implements these laws? Has anyone, and discrimination abounds, not just against people with albinism, with people with all forms of disability in Nigeria. Has anyone been found guilty and made to face the requirements of this law?
Well, you know, not that I know of, but who are the people implementing? We are the National Commission of Persons with Disability, the Ministry of Justice, to be honest with you, and all the activists and advocates who are pushing for the implementation of this law. I'll give you an instance. I was in a very, very well-known hotel in Abuja, and I parked where persons with disability parks, and stepped out of the vehicle, and the lady looked at me and said, "No, this is not for you. This is not where you should park." And I said, "Listen, I'm a member of the community of persons with disability." And she laughed and said, "Oh, God, don't even go there." You understand? You know, so the level of ignorance of this law is one thing to have a law, is another thing for people to know the law. And that's why even in our organization, we had to do a step down. We like put the law in very readable format and made it very easy flowing for anyone to read and understand. But the government that made the law never took time out to promote the law. And so the law is there. How many people have read it? You know, and one of our interventions, we're trying to print the law into 3 major languages, the Hausa, the Igbo, and Yoruba, so that people can read and understand. But again, 100,000 naira, I don't believe in punitive measure, though, but 100,000 naira, anybody can make a joke out of you and decide to pay that and get out of it. But the implementation is always the problem. I can tell you that there are many judges out there that probably don't even know that law exists. And so if you're coming before a judge and telling someone that, look, somebody discriminated me and that's why I brought the person before you, sometimes it's a joke, it's a laughable endeavor, you know. But there are a lot of us who are very passionate about the implementation of the Discrimination Prohibition Act for persons with disability, and we will keep doing that. And of course, there's also a plan to review what is currently in existence, because there are emerging issues around disability. There are emerging legal framework that we need to incorporate in what is existing currently. So there's been very few of such reprimand from that particular act.
And still on that act, Mr. Pili, particularly as it has to do with your position on protecting the vulnerable, particularly in the aftermath of the removal of fuel subsidy, Marco was asking only a short while ago about the difficulty in getting to work. But what about getting the job in the first place? The law requires that all public institutions should set aside 5% slots for persons with disability. To what extent, have the subnationals been complying with this law to ensure that members of your association get the opportunity in the first place?
Well, the law is there, 5% employment opportunities, but the government that made the law should be the first to start. I can tell you we did a survey just in Abuja on all the ministry. We don't have up to 3%, or we don't even have up to 1% workforce that are persons with disability. The highest person with disability in civil service is on level 13. So you can imagine the impact of that. So we do have that law as a nation. Again, implementation. And I think the highest employer of labor are the private sector. And the private sector are totally unaware of this law. We took the advocacy and awareness to the Chamber of Commerce in Abuja last year. We trained a lot of their members on the employment component of the law and making the workplace disability friendly, including workplace discrimination. And it was an eye-opener for many of them. We've gone to Labour Congress, and the Labour Congress brought a huge audience, and we trained them. But these are skeletal intervention. There is no focused intervention and sustainable intervention. And that's why institution of government needs to step in and take the bull by the horn and ensure the dissemination of this information so that we can have strategic and meaningful implementation. A very good question. Some of the issues around the employment of persons with disability is the mindset of the employer. They believe that we can't do anything, They believe that we're not strong enough. They even believe that we don't have the intellectual capacity, which is an erroneous impression. You know, I know many people in the community that are smart. They are making waves in their space. You know, there are many of us in the community that can get the job done.
Okay.
And let the society give us the opportunity and hold us accountable.
Well, most certainly there are organizations, as you very well know, Mr. Pele, who already take that very seriously. But to the issue on hand, one of the things that you put in your recommendations is some palliative arrangements. You're suggesting transport subsidy. I think it was the House of Representatives that also made that suggestion as well. And I'm not sure whether or not Labour did the same. And you also asked, you're suggesting food banks at the national and subnational levels for equitable distribution of palliative care among persons with disabilities across the country. I've joked around this on this program before. Once you hear palliatives, 2020 comes to mind. The kind of things that happen at that time, a number of people are not going to forget in a hurry. So it just goes back to the question of how. First of all, the feasibility of it, then the practicality of it, and how significantly you think it'll affect or move the needle on the effect of this subsidy removal on the people.
You know, Ayo, the truth is the problem is not some of these ideas and whether it is feasible. It is. It is the individuals that you put there to implement them. If you put an individual who is selfish, corrupt, just like the same way they handle the palliatives in the past, you know, they are bent on enriching themselves at the expense of the poor, you know. And so when you have the right strategy and you have the right thinking individual and the right doing individual, then you get results. Most of the problem with this kind of intervention, and several of them in the past, is that when we finish them, we close. It's like you finish a book and you close the book. We need to go back and do some simple research to understand what happened. You know, what did we do well? What is it that we did wrong? And that's why in our position paper, we're not just asking for this intervention, we're also saying, let's, at the end of the exercise, carry out a survey, a study, a data, so that we can know what happened, who did we reach, how did we reach them, what is the significance, what's the impact of this intervention in the life of the people that we're intervening for. You know, so succinctly put, it's the individual. If you have the wrong individual in the right place, you get the wrong result. You know, if we have true patriots and compassionate individuals who are moved with empathy, they will deliver and touch and impact the lives of the people that they lead.
Let's wind down with your position paper. You, TAF Africa, made some recommendations, some of which includes implement a targeted transport subsidy program specifically designed for persons with disabilities. And you say that this program should provide discounted or free transportation vouchers, passes, or dedicated transportation services to ensure affordable and accessible transportation options. Establish food banks at the national and sub-national levels for an equitable distribution of palliative care that would, again, among persons with disabilities across the country, encourage and incentivize private and public sector employers to implement, workforce inclusion initiatives for persons with disabilities. And you go on to say this can include work from home options, flexible schedules, accessible workplaces, and accessible transportation assistance. And, you know, I did ask about the basis upon which some of these suggestions can be executed. First, who did you submit this to, and how are they responding to it?
Well, you know, access is one thing that we don't really truly have. So I reached out to friends like the NLC president because of the critical role that he's playing with his engagement with government. You know, we did submit to them. We're also trying to reach the President Chief of Staff, who happens to be a good friend of mine. We are reaching everybody that we can reach. That's why we also have reached channels. And it was only late last night, and you said, come over, you know, which is something that I'm very proud of in terms of what John does with you guys. So we're reaching everybody. I don't mind. I would even send it to John because I know he has access, you know. So anybody that can push it to the presidency, to those in charge. But these things are doable, you know. But I want to also speak to the issue of the food bank. I am particularly interested in what happened to those who are not in the metropolis, the locals, those who live in hamlets, you know, how we must reach them, you know. And like I said, if we have the right people and people who have that mindset to truly serve and impact the people that they are leading, these things are doable. They are doable. Like you said to me, the basis. Yes, I was particularly at the forefront during the palliative distribution. I distributed for the European Union, you know, and it was a very simple exercise for us, you know, getting the right people that we know will deliver the food to the people who needs it, you know, and making sure that that happened. But Chamberlain, I know we're out. Please, I want to say something that is trending. There's a video that is trending saying that there are some palliatives for persons with albinism. It's gone viral. Please, it is a scam. It is a scam. I'm going to do another video today and see how that can correct that. They are calling the numbers on that and they're swindling people. Do not respond to it.
Wow. All right, we do thank you for coming on. Jacob Pele, founder and CEO, TAF Africa, and we like to believe that those in authority will be listening and then will take this to heart and implement some of them, if not all of them. Thank you, and all the best.
Chamberlain. Thank you, Chamberlain. Thank you, Mowgli. Ayo and Buki, thank you.
All right, well, back in a moment, everybody. Do stay on with us.
It's a stage. You come, you walk, and you go. I'm happy I'm handing over to somebody I know that will carry the mantle of leadership from where I have stopped. We grew up in the job. We grew up together. I was his boss at the time, not even when I was IG. He worked under me twice. We've been working together, and I know how he can go ahead to champion the cause of the police from where I have stopped.
I have just been decorated, and I'm looking forward to taking over tomorrow morning by 11 a.m. I really can't describe how I feel presently, but if I have to tell you anything, I will tell you that right now, I feel like a tiger inside of me, ready to chase away all the criminals in Nigeria. And some other time, I feel like a lion in me, ready to devour all the enemies, internal enemies of Nigeria.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We've got Major General Henry Ayola joining us here today. He's a former commander of Special Task Force Operation Safe Haven, among several other laurels and positions. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Markwe.
Good morning, General.
Good morning, viewers.
I'm sure we received the news of the service chiefs. Yes, we all received it, but I don't think we all received it in the same way. That's why we need to ask how you received yours, because you've been there, you know this gentleman. So when the list came through, was it what you expected?
I think we must give it to our president. He's demonstrated leadership in a grand style. I mean, like, what I say, very scarce in recent time, you know. When you look at the, you know, apart from the balance, apart from the zonal and, you know, regional balance that we see, the quality of the officers, you know, is, I mean, it's a testimony to what must have gone behind in thinking out and arriving at this list. It's a kudos to our president.
Well, yeah, and then if you look at that list, well, we know the NSA used to be an NSA, but now he's been elevated to the position of the NSA. So, what? Okay, let me ask you. I mean, you were in the military, and then he was not. Is there any issue there whatsoever?
Not at all. Interestingly, I've watched people comment on this since the appointments came out. I don't know where they're getting their ideas from, but let me just give a little background. You know, the office of the National Security Advisor was actually started as what we call coordinator on national security by the decree number 19, that's the National Security Agencies Act now of 1986, which was the decree that de-established or disbanded the then Nigerian Security Organization, NSO, in 1986. And so 3 new organizations were created: the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Intelligence Agency, and the SSS, or what we call Department of State Services. Okay, and then the Office of the Coordinator on National Security was formed to coordinate these 3 agencies, you know, their intelligence activities. And the duties of the cons was then the short form of it, cons, are clearly stated. I don't know if we have time, we look at those duties and see there are about 6 of them clearly stated, and each and every one of them related to those 3 new organizations. They've got nothing to do with the armed forces. So I don't know where people are getting the confusion from. Now, the Defense Intelligence Agency, of course, has a military officer as the head, who is called the Chief of Defense Intelligence. And here, in fact, that decree also says that he reports to the Chief of Defense Staff. He's directly responsible to the Chief of Defense Staff. That act also said for the other 2, that's NIA and DSS, that they report directly to the president. So the work of the NSA, which was a change of nomenclature from that cons to NSA, that was in January 1993. But it remained cons from that 86 to January 1993. That was the nomenclature it was given. And that act has not been amended anyway. But somehow, maybe by presidential fiat, you know, it was renamed NSA. And that was it. And the work of the NSA remained what that coordinator of national security is stated to do in that decree. Maybe we should take a look at it. There are 6 of them. That's section 4 of that decree number 19, that's Security Agencies, National Security Agencies Act, 1986. Number 1 says that for the purpose of coordinating the intelligence activities of these 3 new organizations, okay? Not even, so the cons actually does not even have administrative, you know, authority over them. It's just coordinating their intelligence. Of course, we know that even in reality, that's what obtains. The DG, DSS, DGNIA administer those organizations. They don't have to refer to an NSA office to administer this organization. But the NSA office essentially really is a clearing house for these 3 organizations, where intelligence are brought in from the 3 of them, they are collated, they are integrated, to create a national intelligence estimate with which to brief the president. And then, of course, to coordinate the intelligence operations so that, they don't work cross-purpose and all of that, which is a good thing to do. So I don't see where there is a link between the NSA's office and the military headquarters. Before I finish, rest on that. Of course, you know that the armed forces has a minister, okay? I mean, the service chiefs relate to the minister. In real sense, even the minister is only holding fort for the president and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Because the service chiefs relate directly with the CNC, really. But of course, because the CNC won't be available to do most of the administrative things that go on in the Ministry of Defense, or just like any other ministry. So you have the Minister of Defense doing all of that. The different councils, the Army Council, the Air Force Council, the Naval Board, when they hold it, I mean, it's the minister that sits in place for the president for all of that. So, of course, the line of reporting is clear. I've never seen anywhere, unless there are any other documents I've never seen in my life. I've not seen any, and I used to be principal staff officer to Minister of Defense. So I know how the Minister of Defense function. I used to be military assistant to Chief of Army Staff, so I know how the Army headquarters function. So I've not seen anywhere where there is a cross between the two.
Before you shed further light on that, in terms of those reporting lines, could you then tell us, I mean, during former President Buhari's time, there were several narratives and word out there that there was this internal rivalry between service chiefs, and sometimes the NSA, they wouldn't listen to him, whether it was true or not. Perhaps you tell us now, assuming that even transpired, what could cause that kind of scenario?
Yeah, I think if I make a good guess, I know where some of this misconception in terms of line of reporting is coming from. And it's not peculiar to the NSA's office. We've seen that a lot in Nigerian setting, where people try to arrogate to themselves even powers that are not statutorily given to them. But if they can get away with it, they do it. Actually, if it gives them some advantage or gives them some additional power where they can gain something for their own office. That has happened over several years. We have seen offices that, the statutory powers are known, but we have seen individuals with some clout arrogating more power than what that office is actually entitled to, and getting away with it. It's all a function of who is the head at the given time, or who is even the Minister of Defense. I've seen Minister of Defense that even if the person who was NSA at that time dreams of inviting his service chiefs, none of them will dare go there, because they know that their Minister of Defense will not take that nonsense. But I've also seen others where we have seen some NSAs who are the clout and who actually rally the service chiefs. And there may be, again, another reason is because most of those NSAs were senior military officers. And because they are senior, most of them, in fact, we've never had a case where we have an NSA that is junior to the service chiefs. And so that seniority thing, in the military is very strong. Even though you are not under a person, but because it's your senior, and because, there's nothing wrong in service chiefs having some cooperation with NSA's office. But the Chief of Defense Intelligence and all the head of the military intelligence, Director of Military Intelligence for the Army, Director of Naval Intelligence, Director of Air Intelligence, they all relate with the CDI, with the NSA's office. Those are the ones that have business to do with the NSA's office. Unless there is an extraordinary thing that the president gives a directive, specific directive, and asking the NSA to either supervise or coordinate or chair a meeting with service chief. That, you can have that. But statutorily, day-to-day working, there's no clash and there's no linkage.
Now, some people will say maybe it's as a result of some of these precedents which we've seen, the personal clout that people bring, the force of personality which they bring to the office of the NSA, and then just generally, how the police has, the police force, and this is not the fault of any of the current IG or even the immediate past, because the very fact that we're currently inviting the military into our internal affairs, says a lot about the police over the years. So, there have been questions as to whether or not the fact that, the current NSA is a former police officer, whether that will have anything to do with the clout he might be able to summon in carrying out his duties. Do you see anything there?
No, well, maybe, keen from the last point I made, I don't even think there's any need for it. Because the duties of the NSA have expounded. I agree with that, because again, I've made this point severally in several fora that decree of 1986 ought to have been reviewed and amended by now. I mean, you can imagine the challenges we had at that time compared with now. And don't forget, the main focus of that decree actually was to de-establish the NSO and create these three, new agencies. So you'll find that it's just more or less about all that, nothing more. It's just about 3 pages, so you can understand. Of course, yes, if there are, all it takes is to review it and do an amendment. Or, in fact, we need an amendment of a National Security Act, a real robust one, that will not just take care of the security and intelligence agencies alone, even the armed forces, how the armed forces should be run at the highest, at the military strategic level. If you take an example of the American 1947 Security Act, that's when, for the first time, the U.S. Armed Forces was brought into one single body called National Military Establishment. That was what it was even called. Not even Armed Forces. It was in 1949 when it was amended that they changed it to Department of Defense and all of that. So things like that, we need to keep reviewing. And that way, the roles of the NSA could expand. Why not? Because of the increased challenges in different areas. For example, we didn't have a counterterrorism center at that time. We didn't have issues of terrorism even in the nation. So, subversion and all of that are going on, and insurgency and all of that are going on. So, of course, the job should, the job specification should increase, but it should be done properly by reviewing and amending that.
So while the law might continue to expand and should be reviewed to take cognizance of, the, will I say, increasing importance of why we have an NSA, the question is, do you think that also, because some people are already carrying out these roles even before we're expanding laws, just by mere force of personality and by the fact that they occupied certain offices before. This question I'm asking has nothing to do with the personal capacity of the current NSA. We saw that. We saw what he could do when he was chairman of the EFCC. But, questions abound as to, it's been a while. We have seen there is history about police officers or former police officers being appointed into that particular role, but it's not recent history. It's since 1999 that hasn't been. So do you think that could in any way impede, say, the cooperation that he might get from, even though you said that he doesn't really have anything to do with military officers, but you have been very clear in spelling out the line. So if military officers say, look, you have nothing, you have no business with us, we do not report to you, do you think that could impede just because of his background as a police officer? Do you think it has any effect?
Yeah, let's look at it this way. Under what circumstance do we really expect that, say, service chiefs, for example, will have some, consultation to do with the NSA?
I can find one. Terrorism.
Yes. No, it's already there. It's already going on. But like I said, you see, from even NSA anywhere in the world, either it's in the US, in the UK, I've never seen of any NSA in anywhere in the world summon service chiefs of the armed forces to his office. It doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. There's no such cross channel.
I think it's a question of word that is used. Invite.
Either invite or... You see, what I'm saying is that I don't want to create... It's not a cut and dry thing. There can be situations where... And you say, let me put it this. This is the way it goes. The work of NSA actually is to advise the president. When he had collected, all of the intelligence coming from this... Don't forget, the intelligence community goes beyond these three, actually. All of the other ministries that have intelligence components and departments, like America, they have about 18 different government intelligence security agencies in the intelligence community. We need to also, that's one work for the new NSA. We need to craft ours and bring in that many private sector experts in different fields of security that should be brought into that, intelligence community. I've been an advocate of that for years now. So that the nation can learn to harness and put forward our best foot in getting anything done. It's not limited to these major government agencies. There are so many agencies. In fact, all of the other paramilitary agencies also have some intelligence component. They should come into it.
Okay, enough of the politics. That's what we say. We're focusing largely on the politics and how this is going to work.
Sorry, I didn't make that point finish. So if the NSA has a thing that requires him sitting with the service chiefs, he writes a recommendation to the CNC to say that, this is on the table. We need a meeting. The CNC will then give what we call National Security Presidential Directive to that effect. That's how it works.
Okay.
All right. I think our colleagues in Lagos have a question or two for you. Go ahead, guys.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. General Yola, just to be clear about certain things as regards the working relationship of the Office of the NSA and the service chiefs. Let me read this material. The essential mandate of the Office of the NSA consists of intelligence gathering, processing, and dissemination towards warding off threats to the well-being of the nation. And I imagine that gathering and dissemination of this information, as you say, will first of all go to the office of the CNC before it gets to the service chiefs. So if that is the case, let's now cast our minds back to the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari, where there was a jailbreak. What was the point of disconnect, if you could explain to us why intelligence failed, not just on that occasion, on many other occasions, and why that perception that there was a lack of synergy between the former NSA and the former service chiefs?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good example for us to take a look at. Well, I was privileged also to get close to what happened then because I was on TV discussing that particular incident. And for me, I think, over time it has become fashionable for us to just drop the blame at the door of the intelligence community or the intelligence agencies. For me, looking at that jailbreak, I think it went beyond failure of intelligence. I don't even know whether there was failure of intelligence or not. But I saw many people who went there. They were not even asking the right questions. Because the first thing to ask is there a standing operating procedure for that correctional facility? When last was that standing operating procedure practiced? What was supposed to be an emergency response drill in that correctional facility? When last was it rehearsed? These are things that are not there at all. In fact, I was opportune to get close to somebody who came from the paramilitary, the correctional ministries, agency itself. And when we discussed this thing, I discovered that there is a lot of gap. Capacity gap, knowledge gap as to how to secure those facilities. Look, intelligence, like I say, it's easy to put the blame on intelligence. Well, intelligence work actually ends at dissemination.
Pardon me, let me come in there. I'm trying to ask you to tell us, independent of the individuals now, where do you think the intelligence may have failed? Was it at the point of it getting to the CNC before it was disseminated to the service chiefs? Or did the service chiefs fail or refuse to take up that intelligence and act on it?
Okay. The point I'm making really is that I'm not of the view that intelligence failed. I don't agree with that assertion. There is no proof for that. It's just a casual, convenient way of where to put the blame. I can't. It's not like I'm holding brief for the intelligence, agencies. But I know from what happened from the report, even from what I get from the correctional facility at that time, because I got involved in it, and there are what we call standing operating procedures. It doesn't involve service chiefs. What you are supposed to do in doing your work at a location where you're on guard, it doesn't even need your commanding officer, because there is supposed to be standing instruction. That if this happens, you have to do this. It's when you have carried it out that you cannot be reporting, not waiting for any order from above.
Well, General,
you don't need an order from a superior officer to do an assignment in which you already have standing instructions, standing mission, standing
General,
task,
just a quick
and you know
one.
what to do.
Just a quick one, because you've spoken to what the security officials, the agencies, and all of them need to do. My own concern is what the people need to do. We've been talking a lot about the partnership of the people in all of these, the people in the local communities, rural areas, and all of that. They have their own intelligence system as well. One wonders how we are able to aggregate or galvanize all of that partnership with the people who themselves are, shall I say, the cannon fodders when there is insecurity.
Yeah, I think it's the same, it boils down to the same, we have people talking about security architecture. It goes down to the lowest level. It's the entire gamut from top, from policy to strategy to processes to procedures to routines to drills, even at the lowest tactical level. And it is that also that would dovetail to the communities, so that the communities will have an interface with their immediate security agencies around them. For example, like the police station around a locality. It is what they have come out with that will help the community to know how to respond, what they should, we have to report to when they see something, to say something, and all of that. So where that is not properly there, it's not been rehearsed, the people are not even aware, and there is no, emergency line to call when they even suspect something. It's still part of what I'm complaining about, that you have to put that in place as a system. It's only then you can be expecting such appropriate response.
All right, we'll have to anchor at this point. If we understand you right, you say the Office of the NSA is the final clearinghouse for DMI and other military intelligence offices.
And the other security agencies.
So they'll need to coordinate with him then. All right, we do thank you for coming on, Major General Henry Ayola, former commander of Special Task Force Operation Safe Haven, among several other positions he held. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much, Ambele.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Since the Road Safety Corps in Lagos especially put out that statement that there's going to be some adjustments to how we commute around the Berger axis of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, it hasn't been the same. And that's Bukola lamented, if I can use the word earlier. It's everybody's lamentation, so to speak. A good number of people are stuck in that traffic this morning. Why? And when is this all going to be over? And a number of other issues to raise this morning with Hamzat Hosseini, who is the Corps Commander of Corridor 1. He joins us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Hamzat. One wonders if you can give us an idea exactly what is happening. The traffic is humongous. Occasionally we see some of your men, sometimes they're not there, sometimes there is no security official at all. Exactly what is causing this humongous gridlock that's led to lots of loss of man hours?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. To answer your question straight, you see, we want to achieve gains without going through some pains. And to every gain, pains is accompanied. Let me first and foremost say that it might be unfair to say that once in a while we're not there. We tried our best possible to arrive at the place as early as possible, and we manage the traffic to the best of our ability. Now, definitely construction work coupled with the traffic volume. For example, if you have 200 vehicles going through a particular entrance, and that is per time, and suddenly the road is being narrowed, definitely we will expect some choke. So that is what is happening. It is not about traffic management per se. I mean, attitude of road users constitute at times for some of these menace. For example, the new garage Otedola Hand had been opened in and out, and some alternative routes to which people can apply were blocked. So it takes patience from our drivers to navigate this portion of road, because our men, even on daily basis, work with other sister agencies. We do route lining to ensure that people don't stupidly, permit me to use that word, pick passengers, commercial drivers, pick passengers, and of course, obstruct movement of traffic. So these and lots more are some of the things. And of course, between 3-4 days ago and now, the traffic situation has improved.
No,
So
I don't know if a number of people will agree with you that there's been any improvement whatsoever. And to speak specifically to that of commercial vehicles that you said, are always on that axis. I don't know if the FRC is saying essentially, or those traffic managers are essentially saying they are completely helpless about this. Incidentally, I, like hundreds, if not thousands of motorists, ply that particular route every day. Going to Lagos or coming from Lagos, vehicles, the commercial buses stop to pick and drop passengers along that narrow route. One would have expected, and because it's a rather short one, it terminates at some point where there's a kind of a bypass where these buses could have stopped, and then there is a bypass just before that narrow path. So one would have wondered that, is it impossible for your men or the commercial buses for themselves to have been told, do not stop along this path, because that is the only thing that causes that neck along that path. It narrows a two-lane escape into one, and it happens every day. Is it impossible to get them to not do that?
I only mentioned one of those reasons why we have some of these hiccups. Not as if that's the only reason. And like I mentioned earlier, we do route lining to avoid situations like you just mentioned. And it is working. However, we ignore the fact that we have lots of vehicles plying that road and choking into that. And to worsen the situation, there are some vehicles, especially these yellow buses, and people who think they are high and mighty, driving against the flow of traffic. How do you relate with somebody who is carrying one money bag and having armed men in their front, and they come in convoy, beating both road safety, last mile, even the deployed police at the different points, including the trace. Driving recklessly, they are ready to hit anybody, knock anybody down. And they will go forward to go and block other vehicles coming either in or out. So even yesterday, we held a meeting with the Federal Controller of Works in Lagos and the Julius Berger themselves. We held a meeting to re-strategize on how best we can cut this menace. So these are some of the problems. For example, the road linking Ojodu from the express has been blocked. So which means people from Ishari Olowora have to find another way with which they can navigate going into Lagos. So a road, a carriageway meant for 4 lanes, for example, has been narrowed to 2. Looking at the volume too, patience is what we need from our drivers. Attitude is that thing we need to change. If we go in trickles, we will get out of that place. But a situation where we drive roughly, definitely we will expect a hiccup. The agencies have their tow vans, tow trucks stationed. At times, the volume of traffic will make it difficult for even the recovery vehicles to get to that place where the problem is. So we have to navigate and eventually get a way around it. Let me tell you, a minute delay on that will cost more than 1 kilometer.
Sector Commander, If I may come in there, so that we can manage our time, I'm glad you talked about a strategy meeting with the contractor handling the work on that road. So that suggests that there is some form of consultation in terms of working on how to manage traffic on the road. You guys are talking. So I wonder how that then doesn't translate to communication for the road users as well, because communication is key, especially for a route that is an access route to hundreds of thousands of Nigerians, as my colleague has said. If that was going to happen, a diversion was going to happen on Monday, how come the Road Safety Corps and indeed other traffic management agencies didn't put out information? And, you know, there's a world of media that the traffic management agencies can use to put out information such that people can be prepared, or will use other alternative routes. So why is the commission not making good use of communication?
Of course we did. The core public education officer at the national headquarters made a press release sent to various print and electronic media, and it was heard. I heard it myself. It was heard appropriately. And of course, the core marshal directed. And when I saw it, I was relieved that at least members of the public will have listened. Even we discussed it at the meeting yesterday. There was information to members of the public.
Well, so just a quick one, because we have to wrap this up now, Mr. Hamzat Hosseini. Are you aware of an allegation against the police that some of them collect money from motorists to go against traffic?
If I say I have not heard, I would be lying. But then, where do we have a proof? Before you allege somebody, you have a proof to say this has happened.
This strategy meeting you had, did it come up with in their conversation with the police? You had a strategy meeting. Did it come up in that meeting with the police?
You can't accuse people of something you don't have.
It's just an allegation, just for them to confirm whether or not it is.
We used to discuss it, and the various DPOs who said there was nothing like that.
Okay,
that they personally monitor their own men. And I can't speak for the police.
Well, that's the expected response. But for now, we have to thank you and hope that at least, as you said, it's working, but let Lagosians feel that it's working indeed. Hamzat Hosseini is Corps Commander, Corridor 1 of Road Safety in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time.
And just to add that, I was going to follow up, with Mr. Hosseini, that the notice put out was on the 19th of June. It could have been a lot sooner than that, such that motorists, commuters can be prepared, for what's coming ahead. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done for efficiency, of the management of traffic.
What is important and that people would like to hear is whether or not, when is this going to be over? But let's take some of your own messages before we end the program today. New Service Chiefs and National Security from Henry Okeke, it's a mail, says enhanced welfare packages for servicemen, use of advanced technology for intelligence, professional training, interagency cooperation, and civil-military relations as some of the key performance indicators. Good job of work there.
And this is coming from Musa Mohammed. He says, solving security challenges is not rocket science. They need to, 1, provide data, I believe, for analysis and predictions, provide CCTV for major town and drones for rural areas for surveillance, active body cameras for officers on duty to eradicate brutality, and database of criminals, I believe that should be.
This one comes from Bolanle, who says, very important conversation on the Disability Act. I agree that Nigeria has the tendency to make laws without evaluating subsequent impact. Legal change comprises both laws on the books and law in action. It is imperative that we examine implementation and the impact.
Well, this last email is from Olagunjo Ladile, who says, talking about Mr. J.K. Pele's appearance, it says, when implementing mitigation for fuel subsidy removal, it is indeed important to consider a comprehensive analysis that covers different demographics, which helps to ensure that policies are designed in a way that considers the diverse experiences and perspectives of all individuals. This helps identify and address potential disparities or inequalities that different demographic groups may face. However, we should also avoid unintended consequences and make informed decisions to mitigate them. This can also help avoid inadvertently marginalizing certain groups or exacerbating disparities.
All right. Well, there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you all, as always, for sending in your perspectives on this subject matter. We welcome them all the time. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Well, we certainly hope that we've helped make the sun rise at your end, even if it's raining. We wish you a beautiful day ahead. Thank you for watching. I'm Welcome, Yusuf.
And whether it's rain or sunshine, ensure that you rise against the odds. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.